So you can create an animated GIF and send it over iMessage on your iPhone or put it in your website, and it creates a great animation and sometimes looping as many times as you want, or you can loop it forever. The downside is the file size has to be small. The resolution can't be that great, and you can do it from After Effects. We just create the movie in After Effects and output it to a movie file and import that to Photoshop and simply save it for the web. It's as easy as that. You can do it by starting the drawing in Photoshop and importing it to After Effects, but today I'm just going to try showing how to do everything in After Effects except for converting the movie to an animated GIF. We have to do that in Photoshop. So let's get started. I'm using OS X Mavericks 10.9 and After Effects CC 12.1. The first thing we see is the Welcome to Adobe After Effects window, and from here we can just select a new composition, give it a name. I'm going to call it Animated GIF. Preset is custom, and I find that 270 by 290 is a good size for animated emoticons, for iMessage, or for small icons for a website. You have to unlock the aspect ratio in order to get this size because the standard is something else. I like the pixels to be square and a frame rate of 30 frames per second, just so we can have quick mental calculations. Resolution full, duration 2 seconds at the max. I wouldn't go any more than this because you want to keep the file size down. And the background color is white. This is all fine. So here is our composition. Let's start by going Layer, New, Shape Layer. And from here you can select any of the shape tools. And to give it that standard emoticon look, I'm going to go with a yellowish color and just draw a face here. If you draw a circle without pushing any buttons, you have an ellipse. If you hold down the Shift button, it will create a perfect circle. So I'm holding Shift and drawing this. And we're still in the draw mode, so click over to use the selection tool, so now we can drag and rearrange things. You can also rearrange things by pulling down the properties over here in the timeline. Before we get too far, let's save our project. And now we can continue. So let's create another shape layer. The white fill, white stroke, and these will be the start of our eyes. We'll use the ellipse tool. Let's say we start with the eyes kind of squinty like this. Then we can create a new shape layer. And let's start naming our layers. If you select a layer in the timeline and hit enter, you can type in a name for it. This one will be called pupils. This next layer will be called eyes. The next layer will be called head. And in our pupils layer, having it selected, giving it a black fill, I'm using pretty standard colors to simplify the coloration and gradient, keeps the file size down, and just drawing a couple of eyeballs. Keep saving along the way. You can use the file menu, or you can just hit Control S. There's a lot of quick shortcut keys. And let's draw a new shape layer for the mouth. So layer, new shape layer, using the pen tool. Just do a simple mouth or whatever you want. And now we have 4 layers here. I'm going to rename this one mouth. What we're going to do is have the mouth open and the words bucket appear, which means Y in Tagalog. So let's set a keyframe by pulling down this menu, going to Contents, Shape 1, and Path. We're going to keyframe the path of the mouth. So starting at time 0, the mouth is as you see it. Let's say 15 frames in. We use the pen tool to adjust this path. Make it like that. And After Effects says the rest. So he's like talking. And let's say here we make it go back here. Here we make it go here and here. We make it go pretty much back to what it was. You can copy keyframes and paste them elsewhere. This is just making sure that our mouth is exactly the same way as it was before, so that when we loop it, it always loops back to the same place. So now if you scrub through the timeline, you can see our animation playing. You could also render a RAM preview by clicking on this RAM preview button. Bucket, 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 bucket. See, that's what he's saying. We could also add some animation to the eyes. So, using the previous keyframes on the mouth as a reference, we can set a keyframe on both of the eyes. Position. We can, so on the pupils, we can set a keyframe on the position. So right now they're kind of looking off to the right. Let's make sure we set a keyframe at the end so that the animation, no matter what we do in between, it'll always end up in the same place and it will loop nicely. So let's say the eyes line up when the keyframe of the mouth gets widest, and the eyes go here. Let's say here they go to the left, here they go to the right, here they go up, and we already have the keyframe landing us back. So now if we render a preview, it'll look like that. Then we can just add the eyes widening. can also align that create a keyframe on path 1, another keyframe at the end, so it ends up the same way. Let's just say right in the middle, the eye gets really big, like that. And we'll do the same thing for ellipse 2 of the eye. Keyframe here, keyframe here, keyframe here, and on our middle keyframe, the eye is really big. So now if we look at our animation, it looks a little like this. So I'm going to stop that, and lastly, we can add some text by going Layer, New Text. So we'll just add the text there. After Effects allows you to see title or action safe lines, and I always like to keep all animations and text within those center lines, because when you send it they can get scaled and things can go out of view. Right now the text defaulted to a grayish color, so when the text layer is selected, you can see up here in the paragraph window, you can change the color of it. I'll just make it red. And I have a little typo in there, so selecting the layer, going back to the text tool, I'm just going to delete that. And now we just have this. And we can animate the text. So for example, over here in the effects and presets, I want to search for text. And you can see there's a text bounce expression and other things you can do with text. Let's try this text bounce. Just drag it and drop it on the layer in the timeline. And you can see the bounce comes in. It's a little drastic. So we want to select this layer and go over to the effects controls window. Let's have the bounce start from about here. And we can also set keyframes on all of the bounce options. So now we have a nice little animation in the text, which kind of goes with what the face is saying. And we should fade in and fade out the text, so at the beginning and the end of the file it looks the same, so we can loop it. So under transform, set a keyframe on opacity, make it 0 in the beginning, drag this out a little bit, make it 100%. He's asking bucket. And then around here, set another keyframe. And by the end, we have a keyframe on 0. So it's gonna, the opacity of the layer is gonna fade in. It's gonna do its bounce, and then it's gonna fade out. So that's our whole movie. It begins and ends in the same place, and we can render it and play it out. One more thing we can do is make this a little more three-dimensional by pre-composing those layers which nest it into a composition that we can then apply effects to, like sphere. So as you can see, this gives us a bit of a three-dimensional feel. And that's pretty much it. Feel free to play with it. There's also After Effects Puppet tool, which is very useful for animations, but maybe not something as simple as this, which is easy to do just by animating the paths. So let's render this out now. We select Composition, Add to Render Queue, and we can take a look at the settings here. It's fine if you leave the render settings as they are. The output module should be set to animation because we want to maintain that transparency. Click OK here, and we can just select the output location of our movie and go ahead and render it. Now that that's done, we can hide After Effects, go to where we've saved our rendered file, and simply drag that onto the Photoshop icon, also using Photoshop CC. It will read your file and place it on its own timeline. You don't need to worry about that at all. It's got all of your animation. All we have to do here is File, Save for Web, and we are in the Save for Web menu, which tells you the approximate size of the file that you're outputting and gives you options like whether you want to loop it once or however many times you want. I like mine to loop forever. And you can change these options to reduce your file size, change your resolution. Right now I think this looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. This is my animated GIF saying bucket. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. And that's it. Now, if we look where we saved the file and open it with something like a web browser, which will play animated GIFs, you can see our final animated GIF, which can be sent over iPhones or whatever you like. So that's it. Feel free to message me for questions and give me any of your feedback. I'd love to see what you're doing with this. Take care.